Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome again to Design Shanghai Forum. My name is Aidan Walker. I'm the program director of the forum, which is a wonderful, wonderful job, as I think you probably heard me say already more than once. A couple of years ago, we managed to assemble a program of incredibly influential and amazing speakers. And this year, I think we've actually done even better. It's one of those things about video, is that if you can persuade someone to spend half an hour or an hour making a video for Shanghai, it means they don't have to come to Shanghai, which is obviously a shame. I wish I was there myself, but it also means that we can take our pick of the design giants, really, of the world. And this next speaker is definitely one of the leaders, if you could say, in that particular generation. I've known his work for many, many years, when he was one of the original disruptors of the English design scene in the 1980s. Tom Dixon has a very checkered history and a checkered past, including playing bass in a punk band, lots of motorcycle accidents, and then a hugely influential development of not only a design but also a retail empire. Tom has worked as creative director of Habitat, the English consumer design retail chain. So his work has had an enormous influence on consumers, not just in the UK, but everywhere. As I say, I'm sure you know his name. He now is operating in a very big way in China itself, and is in the next 30-minute video is going to tell you all about the latest work. It's a great film. There's some great installations and some great moments. So without further ado, as I'm fond of saying but haven't said it yet, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy Tom Dixon.
Hello, it's Tom Dixon here, and I'm broadcasting to you from wet and rainy London. Very sad not to be in China for obvious reasons. We're not able to travel. So I wanted to explain a bit more about what we're doing in Shanghai for the Design Festival. And the project that we put together is called Octagon. And Octagon is a traveling show which started in Shanghai, came to London, and has now gone back to Shanghai again. And it's really an attempt to try and tell many different stories, 8 stories about this brand, Tom Dixon. I think that in China, we have some people that know us very well, some really great customers and fans. But there's many, many people that have no idea who we are, who might know the product but don't know the stories behind them. So what we're trying to do with Octagon is to show many different facets, some historic, some new stories, and some of our best-selling products. So here in Europe, we're just starting to get to grips with the reality that the virus is not going away, and we're going to have a series of different lockdowns and restrictions on the way that we do things. But it's always kind of interesting when society changes, when behavior changes, and I do think that there's opportunities there to design things which are appropriate for a new normal. I think people's thoughts are turning really to very different ways of living. Clearly, just like in China, people have been forced to work from home or mainly work from home, and to jump on the digital revolution and work much more remotely and meet their colleagues remotely. That presents a whole series of challenges, and for us in this building, it's a huge building which has 150 people working in it. It's been kind of interesting to see how the life has been sucked out of the building, and the only thing that really is still working at the moment is the restaurant. And it's made me think a lot about how we use spaces and how we still need to socialize despite the intrinsic problems of not spreading a virus. So clearly people are reassessing the way that they consume things, and I think we've seen a drop in consumption in a lot of things, but some things become more important. Food has become more important, the home has become more important, and people need to use their spaces in multiple ways. That goes, partly for the workspaces, where here we're trying to think of ways to overlap work life and restaurant life. Extending the hours as well so that people don't need to be too close to each other. But the same is true at home, where you're having to use furniture in different ways and use spaces in multiple different ways over the day. So I think we'll see furniture which is more adaptable and a way of living which is more cooperative than it was before, where people share spaces rather than just own them. Hi, this is Tom Dixon in London. I'm going to present you Octagon, which is our installation here at the Coal Office. So here we are in the Perfumery. And you know, we design restaurants and bars, and we design tables and chairs. And more we're interested also in what goes on top of the table and what goes into the bar and what goes into the restaurant. So I'm drinking here out of a new range of glasses called Puck, which is really defined by a conversation with our bar people here in the restaurant to try and find the optimum size and the smallest range of glasses that cover every occasion. Now we have a lot of cocktails, but we also like to drink champagne, we like to have martini, and we need a water glass. And I wanted to make a series of glasses that really, maybe margarita, that really allowed us to have the maximum number of drinking events out of the minimum number of glasses. So here we have Puck, and it's called Puck really because of this really fat, round and minimal base, which is in grey glass, and its thick stem, and that's what ties the whole range together, including these little shot glasses here. So, you know, obviously I'd like to stack them. But I mean, I think for me what's important in putting a table together or even in a bar is having table architecture which still looks very expressive but is minimal too. So this is expressive minimalism and this is table architecture. They're mouth blown and I mean they're handmade. So these are not machine made glasses, these are blown by skilled craftsmen. The whole thing is trying to get with the minimum number of shapes. So you'll see cones, you'll see hemispheres, so half spheres, more cones, tubes, cylinders, and that's it. So there's very little going on here, which is why I like them, because in the end, the hero has got to be the drink, and the things have to function. So these, I think, are going to work, and we've tested them out in the bar, and they've already been a big success. I mean, I'm going to try and make a dangerous stack for you, live on stage, yeah? Because this is what I do all over the world in all of the factories. Yeah. So don't try this at home. Mill is just a series of pepper and salt grinders, which are really to improve the landscape of your table and your kitchen. They're made from stainless steel and polished, which really does a lot for these amazing but very simple contours. We've got a Danish grinding mechanism, and really they're the perfect example of my new theory, which is expressive minimalism. Okay, so I wanted to show you Fat Lounge. Now, I've been wanting to reclaim the word fat and make it positive again, and it's particularly appropriate for upholstery, because what you really want in upholstery is supreme comfort. And the fatness of these curved backrests and the thickness of the upholstery make these a really comfortable series of furniture that we road tested first in our restaurant here at the Coal Office and then at the Manzoni in Milan. before launching them last year in the furniture fair. Now, this year we've added two pieces, one which is this chaise longue here, and the other one which is a sofa which comes in 3 seats and in 2 seats as well. So these are manufactured in Europe at a secret location by skilled upholsterers and metal workers. I wanted really to try and make a chair which had the most elementary components I could think of, and to try and reduce the number of elements and the complexity of elements down to the absolute minimum. So you can see with fat that it's really got the simplest of legs, but even the legs are fatter tube than most chairs. And that gives a really solid base for this very plump cushion, which is just completely round. So again, one of the simplest shapes you could get away with. And the backrest, which is a half round, which really allows you to make all of these kind of love chair configurations, this big snake that we've got here, but then also to make the whole thing slightly more modular in a way that very few other furniture ranges are. So here we're playing a bit with black and white, and we've got some textiles that we co-created with Butte. So Butte are a small and beautiful company in the Scottish Islands, in the very north of the UK, that we've collaborated with to make these textiles. We've done a collaboration with Prolicht in Austria, which is called Code. So Prolicht are a track lighting company who traditionally would make fairly minimal track systems for professional lighting. What we've done is to take an LED module and really just take the circuit board, which is really the object that powers the modern world. The circuit board is in every computer, every car, every telephone, is always hidden. But increasingly it's also in lighting. And instead of hiding away this magical piece of plastic, we've made it into a whole series of objects using just 2 components: the track and the LED circuit board. What's clear is that for designers, what's really interesting is being in a time where technology is changing and engineering is changing, because that really allows you to work on new shapes and new typologies. And what's been amazing about lighting design over the last few years has really been the revolution in LEDs. So LEDs really have been transformative in terms of energy use, in terms of the way that you can illuminate, and also in terms of things of not wasting heat, for instance. So these run cold, the bulbs are not hot, but they also allow you to make very flat light. And of course LEDs are normally not celebrated, but what we've done here is really to make a celebration of the LED light engine. So on these you have 160 LEDs, and then you multiply them and you multiply them again to make a whole series of different sculptures, or just even conventional track systems as well, like over here. So what's been happening over the last couple of years is that we've been gradually and increasingly fast moving all of our lamps to LED. This is really important because of the energy consumption and efficiency of the LED light bulb compared to the incandescent. And also, it's become harder and harder to specify old-fashioned incandescent light into projects. So it's really important for us to move forward with the technology and be really up to date with the LED revolution. So I think here you see very much our, not just interest in LEDs, but our passion for what's going on inside the lighting business now. Okay, so now we're in the disco. Now I've had a checkered past, which included also running nightclubs, so I'm very familiar with sound systems. And what we've done in this room is to set up a space which we can use for entertainment. Obviously at the moment quite difficult, but even now we're thinking about having solo disco where you can dance on your own. So we've got this huge sound system, And this huge sound system is great because it emits a lot of sound. And then we furnished it with the cork range of furniture. What's kind of interesting about cork is it's doing the opposite to the sound system. And we've got a material here which actually absorbs sound. And I think the big problem and the big challenge for designers, particularly in the restaurant bar trade, is given the fashion for a lot of glass in buildings, a lot of concrete surfaces, a lot of hard surfaces, no soft furnishings anymore. We really do need materials that can soften the acoustic properties of a room. And cork is one of those materials. So we've tested this one for a year at the Manzoni restaurant, which is our restaurant in Milan, and found that it's incredibly good, not just because it's an attractive table, but at deadening the sound of people clanking cutlery on the table. So you can see the huge amount of cork that we've used. But what's kind of interesting about this table is it also smells really nice. So the dark colour of the cork is created really by cooking the granulated cork chips, which are byproducts of the cork industry, the wine cork industry. They're granulated and then they're cooked and held together with natural resins to make this reconstituted cork material, which is actually, interestingly enough, carbon positive. So carbon positive is very rare in terms of materials because it means that these cork trees, which are still growing, when the cork is harvested, it's capturing the carbon and making a material which is almost unique in its ability to capture carbon and hold on to it whilst the forest still grows. The interesting thing about this table is that people don't immediately know that it's cork. They often ask what the material is. What they really do is stroke the object first, and I've seen a lot of people just come up and touch it, just try and get a feel. It's got a very warm material, very soft material. So the cork is coming from Portugal, which is still the biggest country for the production of cork, and they've got these amazing forests all over the south of Portugal, where huge quantities of cork are still mainly being made for the wine industry. But it's not often known that it's also a really high-tech material. Obviously it's got a lot of history. You'll see it a lot in you'll see a lot of cork in fishing, for instance, as dampers for the boats when they come into port, to hold lobster pots, so as floats as well. But it's also used in the space race. So cork is an amazing insulator, which is used in re-entry vehicles for the space shuttle as it comes in to protect and shield the astronauts from the incredibly intense temperatures that the space shuttle makes on re-entry. Above the round cork table is burst, which is a chandelier which is made from 12 of these globes that are bursting out of a central hub. And I wanted to make something which really was a lobby filler, something which was more extraordinary. And it feels quite molecular, like a 1950s model of molecules. These are all LED powered with a powerful LED engine, and they have the characteristic of appearing completely solid when they're off and transparent or semi-transparent when they're on. And if you look up at the melt lights here, you'll see them turning on and off, and you'll see a different state of being when they light up. We're now in the perfumery, which is really the idea that interior decoration is not finished until you've not just done the colours, the shapes, the comfort, the lighting, but you've also done the smells. I never really thought that I'd end up doing candles, but as we did more and more interior design, as we worked on more and more spaces, it came to me that really there was something about not just doing lighting, not just doing comfort, not just doing colour and shape in interior design, but actually using all of the senses. Tactility, taste, which we do in the restaurant upstairs, and then scent as well. So it's kind of nice to be in a position where we're able to affect people's noses as well as everything else. Well, the fastest way to get a space smelling differently is with incense. So we've produced these tiny incense holders, really to design from the macro, the whole building, the interior, the lighting, to the micro, and have some really small things which have really big impact on a space. They're machined out of brass, and then they're plated with chrome, with copper, and this is in its natural state. We're now in the Spiral Lounge, and spring, which is really influenced by my childhood playing with slinky toys, but also by the mechanisms of umbrellas and Chinese lanterns. So I wanted to try and make a very voluminous lamp, which came in a very flat box, like a pizza box if you like. So what we've done is actually to make a lamp that can be a variety of shapes. It can be a flying saucer, it can be a pumpkin, or it can almost be a complete sphere. So this is a light you can use in several positions, but what is nice about it is how transparent it is. It occupies a big volume of space without really blocking out light or imposing its presence too much. So it's been kind of quite successful in larger atrium spaces because it's quite delicate. And of course, it's lit by an LED module, an integrated LED. And in this new stainless steel finish, it's really catching the light of those LEDs. So we used them first in a huge atrium in a hotel in Paris. And we've tried them also in these rotating versions, which are not available yet. One day I'm going to turn it into a fan as well and make it spin really, really fast, but there's some safety considerations first. So here we have Mega Melt Chandelier, and this is, interestingly enough, before we released Melt, we were asked by the Sydney Opera House to make a new lighting system for their restaurant. So Australia being the other side of the world and being upside down, we had to make it on a stick coming from the floor because you're not allowed to touch the ceilings of the Sydney Opera House. So when we got home, we loved it so much that we made this chandelier version, which is the right way up. So Australians have got it this way up, coming from the floor, and we've got it this way down. There's been a lot of demand for bigger melt chandeliers, and I think this really deals with that problem altogether of having something which really does have a huge presence. I think there's something interesting about melt because it looks like it's a completely free-blown and random shape, but actually they're produced to very high tolerances in metal molds, and they're blown into the mold like bubblegum. What's extraordinary about them is that you can't really tell how the pattern is created, but what's happened here is that we've got a finish which is called half metallization, which allows light in and allows you to see inside reflections. So with the organic shape, with the bulb reflecting off the surfaces, and with you being able to see inside, it's creating all of these really psychedelic patterns, which some people have described look like marble, other people talk about lava, and it's one of those lamps which really has a different presence in a different finish. So the silver one looks completely different, and people can read them as space age items or organic items. They look like they're part of the natural world, really. So now we're in the S-Chair Museum. So S-Chair is a chair that's followed me around for almost all of my career, and there's some very early versions here, and we just wanted to show the evolution of this object. So what we've got here is maybe version number 3, and this was made with a wok from a Chinese cooking shop and from inner tube from recycled car tires. cut into strips and made into a very comfortable upholstery, which has since perished. So that was the origins of the S chair, and I did make a few kind of one-off pieces and refined the shape until we got to this version, which was considerably more commercial, mainly because it was made out of bulrush. And bulrush is a local material which grows in the marshes of Norfolk. And we used to have a collaboration with the Royal National Institute for the Blind, and a blind gentleman used to come in with his assistant's dog and a huge bundle of rush, and he used to rush these in our studio. So I probably made 100 of these in a small scale production before the design got bought by an Italian company called Cappellini. And so for the following 20 years it was made in Italy in a variety of different versions. What happened more recently is that we remade the S chair in a foam called Pure Fusion. So Pure Fusion is two foams. One which is a hard foam, which forms the structure, and one which is a soft foam, which are fused together to make one object which is structural and comfortable as well. So this is the upgraded version, which is a sort of prequel because it follows more the shape of the original. The S chair is actually, a lot of people think it looks quite uncomfortable, but ergonomically it's quite active. Because you use your feet as the other two legs of the chair, and because it pushes your lumbar region forward, it's actually one of those chairs which initially you think is a bit awkward to sit in, but the more time you spend in it, the more comfortable you are, because it's pushing you into actually a really positive ergonomic shape. We've covered the chairs in this Sorensen leather, which is nubuck on one side and suede on the other side, which makes this really nice matte finish here that you see on this prototype. Well, I mean, as I remember it, I was doodling on an envelope and I was doodling a chicken. I thought, well, wouldn't this be kind of an interesting chair? I mean, broadly speaking, it's chicken plus chair equals S chair. We're now in the pattern master class. So I've often been fascinated by the amazing natural patterns that exist in marbles. And anyway, from a remote part of China, we found this amazing marble which is called Primavera, which has some incredibly unpredictable patterns inside. So you'll see the black, the green and the white and the grey, all dosed in completely different quantities in these different tables. So the excitement is really that you've got a unique piece of kit here. It's on a pedestal, which is this time in a silver finish, brightly polished, really to enhance the preciousness of the marble. But we've been thinking a lot about the patterns on marble, the natural patterns, and seeing if we can't recreate them. And so this set of tables here are really inspired by the natural world, but they're also inspired by a very popular hobby in Victorian times, which is called marbling, where people played with these patterns and made marbled papers that you can see quite often on the lining papers of books. And what's interesting about this is that the marbling isn't a surface decoration, but it's really something which goes all the way through the reconstituted stone, because these are made from the marble dust which is collected from the factories that make our marble tops. They add a little bit of pigment and a little bit of resin, and then they swirl them to get these fabulous psychedelic patterns. So there's a real postmodern sensibility in here with these really quite bright colours and lots of different types of marbling going on here. Speckled ones and these more kind of wavy ones. And then when you get to the accessories, some even more exotic combinations of colours here. And of course when you turn the marble on the lathe, it reveals a whole series of much more complex features. Now, what was I talking? So we've decided that we'd like really people to hold on to the containers of our candles for forever. And this candle container here, I think what's interesting about it is that it's so heavy and so non-disposable that I'd really like people to use these as an urn in their funeral. I'm looking for these to be really where you put my ashes when I go. Or you could just use it as a bookend. This one maybe you can use as a spice jar. So the scent in these candles is called the Botanist, and it's a very fresh and grassy fragrance, which is a really cleansing smell for your interior. Now what's good about the vases is really that these objects are very heavy. You can see the wall thickness. So when I do flower arranging, if I do flower arranging, it's good to have a really heavy weight to hold up longer stems. I've always preferred flowers with much longer stems. So these vases are destined to be used for quite unusually long stems. Okay, so we're here in the elementary room, which is really a place where we're showing this new table called Mass. Now, Mass is a kind of very simple idea, which is that we're using these very simple brass extrusions, very much like a plank of wood. So using these archetypical format and really making archetypical tables and a whole series of pieces of furniture just using this singular element. So I quite like the idea that just from this departure point, you can almost make anything, whether that's a table, a lamp, a storage unit, a coat rack, or a console. So Mass is made out of this very thick brass extrusion, extremely heavy and extremely highly polished. It's made in the UK, and it's made actually in Somerset by a very skilled craftsman. Working in brass is not easy, and to make things which look this minimal and this simple, it's actually more difficult than it looks. In the long term, the ambition is really to try and make a kit of parts that any designer or architect will be able to create something using these very primitive forms. New menu?
New menu? Is outside, yes.
Despite all the challenges we've had recently, we've continued to really look at the possibilities of cooperating more in China, and we've just recently opened in Guangzhou and in Beijing, and we'll be opening our permanent store and our flagship in Shanghai in December. So I hope to see you there. Let's hope that the restrictions vanish and that I can be with you sometime very soon.